For more on the President Lula da Silva's visit to China and what might be accomplished, I'm joined by Euan Marshall, Deputy Editor of the Brazilian Report. Euan, good to see you. Thank you very much. We have so much to get through, but let's start with this. The future of the Brazil and China relationship. Much has been bantered about of how it started and how it got here. There were some challenges, but here we are. It seems to be a new chapter.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, obviously has been mentioned in those pieces there that China is Brazil's largest trade partner by some distance, and it has been that way for quite a while now. And relations have been strong between the two countries, apart from potentially this kind of last 4 years where there was definitely some tension when Brazil was under its far-right president, Jair Bolsonaro, who lost the election last year to President Lula. And, that kind of period was, Bolsonaro was never very kind of pro-China himself, but the problem was that some of his cabinet were just like downright racist, actually, during the past government. So, that's something that Lula is really going to work hard in this, particularly in this visit and in the next couple of years to try and really wipe that away. And I think the feeling is mutual on the Chinese side as well. I think there seems to be a feeling of both sides just want to kind of get past that and continue the strong relationship that the two countries have had for such a long time.
I mean, both countries were members of, and this is getting kind of old, but the original sort of BRICS, right? The developing countries, although I feel like that's not an accurate description of where these countries are today, but they were part of the original members of BRICS. And they've come a heck of a long ways since then. But the more recent announcements were some of these BRIC countries, specifically China and Brazil, saying they want to decouple from the US dollar. And much has been bantered about this too, and debated in the media. Is it such a big deal, or is this something they've been wanting to do and they're just doing it now, or is there some sort of instigus that's causing this to happen?
Well, I think because obviously, as mentioned there, Lula, this is his third term as president. He's had some time away, but he was president previously in the 2000s. And during that period, he was very kind of focused on like South-South diplomacy, wanting to make sure that he had the ties with, the BRICS nations and with China specifically. And also trying to potentially to reduce the influence of the United States on Brazil. And the United States and the West as a whole has definitely looked on Lula and Brazil's relationship with China and this visit to China with a bit of concern, especially as Lula has already visited the United States in the start of this third term, and he was just, he was there for a really short time. He did meet with Joe Biden, but there was no, major announcements to come out of that. And so maybe they were feeling a little bit left out, and that it feels like Brazil is perhaps prioritizing China. But, at the end of the day, Lula's diplomacy has always been, you can sum it up as trying to keep everyone happy.
Right. I mean, there are like many countries in the world. They don't have to choose one country. They can be friends and do trade and have all kinds of diplomatic ties with both the U.S. and China. And of course, people will make what they want of politics, of course. But in general, the United States is friendly towards Brazil, right? There's no issue there. Am I right?
That's true. I think, as I said in the first answer, the only kind of point where this was a little bit touchy was during the Bolsonaro government, where there was a sense of tension, trying to the US kind of holding something over Brazil's head with regard to their 5G auction and the potential involvement and or a potential ban for Huawei, for example. Brazil didn't completely cave to the US's demands with regards to a ban on Huawei. Huawei were allowed involved into the auction, but they weren't allowed access to kind of government 5G networks that were put up. But yeah, it's in general, Brazil has always wanted to try and keep both of them on side, and that's not going to change now under Lula, especially under Lula.
The interesting thing that both countries share is China certainly is a beacon of growth for Asia, if not the rest of the world. And Brazil is a beacon of growth for South America, right? When you think about big economies in South America, we always talk about and start with Brazil. And both have their challenges in keeping sort of the working class, the middle class, the rich, and there's the politics involved with it. And those two similarities bring them both together. What does Brazil hope to, accomplish with the relationship with China that might help them continue to be a giant in terms of the economic front in South America?
Well, I think that there's definitely a big political upside to this particular visit for Lula, because especially one of the biggest industries when we're talking about Brazil-China trade comes in agribusiness, and a lot of these kind of agribusiness market leaders in Brazil have always been quite skeptical of Lula and his Workers' Party, and actually were quite in favour of his opponent in the last election. And perhaps, getting a proper strengthening of ties between the two nations could really have a massive upside for Lula domestically. And also, as was mentioned there earlier in some of the clips beforehand, is that Lula is kind of looking for potentially a sort of signal from China regarding the war in Ukraine, because Lula kind of wants this to be an opportunity to kind of show that Brazil is back on the world diplomacy stage. He wants to form a peace club to help mediate a solution, and he feels that China is a key partner in that. I don't think he feels he could do it without China's support. So I don't know if he's going to get any of those guarantees, but I'm sure he'll definitely be trying.
We shall see. We will await, of course, the announcements from this big visit, and we'll wait until then. But for now, thank you very much. Appreciate the analysis.
Thanks, Phil.